Welcome to the Woodpreneur podcast, the best podcast for the business and marketing side of the sawmill, lumber, and wood industry. What's a woodpreneur? If you have a business where you make money as a woodworker, sawmill owner, selling slabs, or a content creator, then you're a woodpreneur. My name's Steve Larosiliere, and I started Woodpreneur Life, Acres of Timber, and the Woodpreneur podcast just for makers, wood entrepreneurs, and small business owners just like you. We're on a mission to empower thousands of wood businesses to grow sustainably and put out great products. Each week, I interview makers, sawyers, content creators, and 6- and 7-figure entrepreneurs that know the wood industry inside and out. With topics covering everything from the urban lumber movement, sustainable sourcing and design, we'll discuss the ins and outs of how to grow, monetize, and fully immerse yourself in the woodpreneur lifestyle. If you're a hobbyist, a full-time wood business owner, part-time entrepreneur who wants to become a content creator, or quit your day job to pursue your dreams, the Woodpreneur podcast is just for you. Thanks so much for listening. Now enjoy this episode. Hey, welcome to a brand new episode of the Woodpreneur podcast. This is your host, Steve Larosiliere. Today's guest is Jonathan Orpin from New Energy Works and Pioneer Millworks. How you doing, Jonathan?
Really great, Steve. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on. So tell us about the business. Which one started first, and give us the origin story.
Sure, you bet. Started early in the 80s, frankly. I'm getting on there. You know, a lot of your listeners weren't even born, maybe, but I started early in the 80s because I was interested in environmentalism
Mm-hmm.
and at the same time interested in entrepreneurialism. So the two kind of came together at New Energy Works. We sort of
Okay.
started as an installation and a solar energy company, but I stumbled upon structural insulated panels, which is a method of insulating. And then as soon as you find structural insulated panels, you find timber framing, which was totally a love affair at first sight. You know, beautiful timbers joined together by handsome craftsmen. I mean, everything worked for me. So we started to be teaching ourselves how to become a timber frame company. And as I used to say to my clients, you know, I know you come to me for my beautiful timber frame, but you also get the most environmentally sound home you can get, whether you want it or not. You know, and they would laugh, and I would laugh, and onward we would go with a well-insulated home made from solid timbers. And then as I went on, I was looking for some more stable timbers because at that time we were on the East Coast, still are, but on the East Coast using green red oak, and the oak would dry a little bit and shift. And I was looking for something more stable, and I stumbled upon reclaiming wood. So we started becoming very interested in the wood that was coming down from old buildings, often going to a landfill, and we started reclaiming that wood and using that, and it had a lot of the stuff that I liked, which was it had stability, it had a story to tell, because I think in any entrepreneurial world you want to have a narrative, and it also was environmentally sound because you know it was reuse. So when we came upon recycled wood, we started using it for our own needs as timber framers, but we immediately realized it was kind of bigger than just us. So we started Pioneer Millworks at the end of the 80s, early 90s. And Pioneer Millworks was and is a reclaimed and sustainably harvested wood company. And we make everything from timbers to flooring to paneling, and most recently, extremely large amounts of exterior wood siding. So, and we make that from, as I said, environmentally sustainably harvested wood.
That's incredible. And how those first couple of years when you were doing New Energy, how did you get the word out?
Well, at that time, I think I went to every single show, home show, mall show, county fair, just anything where I could put up a booth and shake people's hands. I mean, I went so many of them for the first 6 years of our existence that I'm not sure I had any weekends at home. Honestly, it was just show after show, and it worked, but it also kind of took a toll too. At some point, I said, "Okay, I've done my last show." And while that's not the case, we don't do too many shows anymore. But you know, that's how we got started. We got the word out with those shows. We also were
Yep.
blessed with a local public broadcasting station needing a short or just a short documentary. So they showed up at one of our raisings one day and did a 8-minute documentary on us, and that played about 1,000 times in my hometown, or maybe 10,000 times for all I know, over the next 3-4 years. And we got a lot of good feedback from that. We've been blessed with organic marketing forever,
Yeah.
and that's partly
Yeah.
because, again, we do this gorgeous, big, interesting, different work.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
makes for news headlines.
Awesome. So you said that did you start in the Finger Lakes region and then move to Portland? Is that how that happened? Like what caused the switch?
Yeah, I live in Portland, Oregon right now, and I did start in the Finger Lakes. Canandaigua Lake is our closest lake. It's a gorgeous area of Western New York. Some people don't
Hmm.
realize how beautiful it is there. And about 16 years ago, I moved out to Portland. I had suddenly just decided that we had grown the company at that time to about 85 people. And as an entrepreneur, you may know that we're sometimes better starters than we are managers. So
Yeah.
we
Yeah. Yeah.
so it was just time for me to, as I like to say, get a view from a different mountain. Not necessarily a better mountain, just a different mountain. So I
Yeah.
moved out here. I told my coworkers back in New York. I said, "Well, I can either sell the company, or I can become your West Coast salesperson, or maybe I could just take a long vacation," which everybody laughed at. And it turned out that what really seemed to be the made most sense would be to just go out west and start again. We have a lot of clients. We had a lot of clients, still do out west. And that is also where a lot of the big wood comes from that we use.
Yeah.
So it makes a lot of sense for us to have a Western branch. And that's what we are right now. The bulk of the company, or maybe 2/3 of the company, is in New York still, and 1/3 of the company is out here in Oregon. And
That's
I started it from scratch about 16 years ago, as I say.
wow. And where is Pioneer? Is that in New York?
Both places.
Both places. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
so it's kind of a funny story for those of you who remember the Great Recession, August or so in
2008.
2008.
Yeah.
Yeah, the phone stopped ringing, and then when it would ring, it was just to cancel.
Yeah.
It was a really hard time for construction industry, and we found ourselves out here in August of 2008. That's when I first arrived, and so
Hmm.
it was a very hard start. Although I do like to say there's some really good advantages to working in a recession.
Yeah.
You want to know what they are?
Absolutely.
So, one of the ones say is the big guy at the will call station really is glad to see you.
Hmm.
On Monday mornings, the highways are kind of clear.
Yeah.
If you forget to call the crane for the timber frame raising the day before, he's still available.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And there's nobody else on the market right now. So we just
For
kind of put
sure.
our shoulders down and worked like crazy. We doubled our marketing budget where everybody else was kind
Yeah.
of contracting.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we never laid off or cut salaries or benefits. I think we're one of the very few construction companies who pulled that off, but it was not easy. And
Yeah.
and and the good news is we came out of that recession kind of strong. The bad news is, that was not an easy recession for anybody, including us.
Yeah. 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 That's I remember that time I had my last business. It was a time where everybody that gave you money the year before suddenly didn't have any money. that was that was like yeah, and the only other time that I remember before then was in 2001, where it kind of gave everybody an excuse not to pay full price for anything at all ever, right? Like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um
2001 was tough, also, but not nearly as
2000
tough as 2008.
yeah, 2008 was, yeah, that was, it felt longer. um cool. So how did when did you know, at least with with new energy, like how did you find your people? Because when you put out a product, you put out an idea, and there are people that that gravitate or are your biggest fans. Like how did you identify the people, your ideal customer for your business?
Steve, I'm not sure we have even yet.
Mm.
We're pretty practical people, and
Hmm.
when people come to us, we figure out a way to work it. Uh,
Yeah.
and so, if you're asking specifically how leads come in,
Hmm.
we use a few categories. One of them is our goodwill category, which is repeat, referral, and word of mouth, and that
Hmm.
represents about 80% of our work every year. That's
Okay.
critical.
Yeah.
Builders and architects use this over and over again, or now we're doing second generation for some families. Oh my gosh. And just word of mouth. Word of mouth is really huge. But the other 20% is critical. And, we'll use the same methods that everybody else uses. Occasional show here and there. Google AdWords, sadly, is still extremely productive, if expensive, approach. You really, really got to go in there with eyes wide open and understand, what how to spend your dollars in a valuable way, in a value accessible way. So, I'd say we still are always looking. We in the Google AdWords, for instance, we try to specify what types of buildings we do, which are high performance, low carbon equivalent, so environmentally sound buildings, but also high craft and high design. All of our projects are separate and different.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
And custom
I mean, the
and highly
home
custom.
highly custom. Yeah, you
Highly
can see the
custom.
picture behind me, and I mean, this is my own home here,
Hmm.
and it won Home of the Year award for fine home building in 2010,
Wow. Wow.
and I was pretty excited about that, as you can imagine.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Um, how do you separate your time between both companies?
Well, uh, I go where the need is mostly.
Hmm.
I also follow my own strength. The Pioneer Millworks right now, as of 2024, I am not very involved in operationally. Much more involved on a CEO or board of directors level, but not really on the day to day. That's because I've got
Hmm.
good folks there, and it's also because it's not really my strength.
Yeah.
So, and I know that. So, Pioneer Millworks is while it's a specialty commodity, it's still a commodity. It's a mill workshop, and my
Yeah.
strength is more relationship based and relational. And so, I get to know you, Steve, and that means a lot to me. And we build something together that you and your family can live in. And
Absolutely.
that's sort of what my strength is. So, I tend to stay more in the new energy work side of it,
Hmm. Hmm.
and working on those relationships, because every single project we do is separate for a different client,
Yep.
or
Yep.
a different project or a different design in a different location. We work
Yeah.
all over the country, so we're always traveling and meeting new people, and I think that's sort of what drives me. So I'm more involved in the new energy works right now, and of
Yeah.
course, in general, I'm the CEO and chairman of the board, so that takes a lot of time.
It takes a lot of time. Yeah. How throughout when you were, let's say, the first 5, 10 years, how did you personally and professionally develop your skill as a CEO and a leader?
Well, the facetious answer is I would find whatever closest brick wall I could find and run right into it, smack real hard with my head,
Oh, it was like
and
trial
then
by fire, right? Like,
I'd. Well, I didn't have a mentor. If I was to start again, I would probably have tried to do a better job of finding and listening to a mentor.
yeah.
That's a bit of advice for any of your young entrepreneurs out there.
Hmm.
So we figured out our systems ourselves, and honestly, made tons and tons of mistakes. Still do, frankly. But
Hmm.
I say I have to make 1,000 decisions every week, and my goal is 501 of them to be, really correct. And maybe I
Yeah,
achieve that every week. I don't know.
for sure, for sure. What keeps you motivated and excited even after how many years has it been?
More than 35, I figured. Maybe, early 40. So I guess getting on towards 40 years.
Wow.
Uh, uh, the challenge of small business is never ending. I'll tell
Hmm.
you, most of your entrepreneur listeners know that one of the things that drives them is a certain energy and need to be involved and interested on a day-to-day basis, on a moment-to-moment basis. I mean, honestly, many of us are ADHD,
Yeah.
and I am for sure. So for me, this motivation occurs from reacting to solving problems and finding opportunities. And so that sort of keeps me going. The other part is, the community that we work in. We run the company in what we call a triple bottom line approach to business. Have you heard of that?
Of course. I'm a social entrepreneur. Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Good man, my
Yeah, yeah,
hero.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
the triple bottom line, for those who don't know out there, is an equal approach, an equal interest in the company paying attention to three different filters instead of just the bottom line, instead of just profit only. We look at people, planet, and profit. Profit's critical. You got to be a healthy business, but why? So for us, it's we look at people, and people include our people, our company people, our partners, our subcontractors, but also our clients, of course. But maybe it's our school, maybe it's our church, maybe it's our town. And in fact, it happens to be the state, the country, and the whole world, people. And then the next one that we look at very carefully is planet. We're an environmental based company, but everyone should be. And so people, planet, it's the only planet we've got, and profit all come together to form a triple legged stool that upon which we build this company. And so that kind of continues to keep me pretty motivated. Talking to someone like you, Steve, about the value of that, and maybe, introducing somebody to that interest and that concept, that keeps me motivated.
Absolutely. I love that. I think the when I think about people and planet, I also think about like what kind of, not only is it good for the environment, but like how can we create, like, use wood as a tool to um create opportunities, right? Like I feel like the all the people that you've hired, but then I think about all the other people that could have careers and skills and opportunities in order to grow. So um Jonathan, could you hold on? There's somebody at my door and I need to check. Hold on,
Sure,
hold on.
you go ahead.
Okay, so I'm back. So when we have you incorporated that, the triple bottom line, into like your mission and your vision? Is it something that like everybody in both companies are on board with?
To say that, so we're 160 coworkers. To say that
Hmm.
everybody is on board with anything would be quite a stretch. To say
Yeah.
that, is this what drives us as a group and as a company, and certainly as a management and leadership group, and is that what a lot of people are attracted to about my coworkers, about being here in the company? Absolutely, no question about it. In fact, Steve, we recently became 100% employee owned, uh,
Whoa, incredible.
eh, which is part of this whole people thing, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
So by becoming 100% employee owned, and we've used the ESOP method, and we can talk about
Yeah.
that if you'd like, a employee
Yeah.
stock ownership plan.
Yeah.
But by becoming 100% employee owned, I am, as a founder and a CEO, totally walking my talk of empowering my people and sharing with my people, exactly the benefits of ownership. I mean, I couldn't have been here without them. I mean, we have new people who who will one day bring the great benefit. But my longest employee, I think, is 34 years or something, 36
Wow.
years, somewhere around there. And we
Wow.
have many in between, and then some new ones. And that's just the way business works with
Hmm.
160 people. So we do have a mission and a vision statement that we think
Hmm.
really does cover um, the what we're trying to do and what we're trying to achieve. We have an outward facing one, but we also have an inward facing one that we share amongst ourselves. And I mean, I think it's a value that people understand, but also appreciate. Uh, why we're in business. We've been
Yeah.
a triple bottom line company since the beginning, even though we didn't know what it was called.
Yeah.
And in fact, the phrase itself was only coined about 1994 by some economist. I don't remember who. You can look it up. But, a
Yeah.
smart guy who just decided, wow, I see these companies that are really trying to look beyond just the profit, just the next quarter's money in the pocket. And this is what I'm going to call it, triple bottom line.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah. That's great. So tell me, what, like on a day-to-day level, like how are you spending your time these days?
well, actually, I have to be clear with myself on that. So your question happens to be fall into something that's quite fertile in my mind. I've been working really hard to give up the West Coast New Energy Works general management to a younger coworker who's coming along in that area, so that I can spend more time as being the actual CEO and founder of the company. So I calculated the other day, I'm spending about 70% of my time as a CEO, and I can talk about what that means. About 20% of my time as in sales, West Coast sales, because it's what I do. And then the last 10% in sort of miscellaneous, but helping the West Coast general manager and even being out on a timber frame raising, I still am doing that on occasion, which is a riot. It's my favorite day. So, a lot of my time right now is as CEO duties. What does that mean? Well, it might mean working with the insurance companies on our overall program and audit. It certainly means next week's board of directors meeting is something that I've spent quite a bit of time preparing for. We now have a partially independent, partially in-house board of directors. Before we became employee owned, I didn't, like many entrepreneurs, really didn't take the board of directors particularly seriously. So now I have to. I'm no longer the owner. I work at the pleasure of the board, which
Wow.
is kind of a fascinating change.
That's a
Let me.
wild concept. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
I
Yeah.
used to say, I say I used to be the sheriff, and I'd come riding in on my horse with my 6 guns and make the decisions. Now I'm more like a federal marshal. I've
Yeah.
got this long black jacket covering my guns and following a lot of rules and being much more
Yeah.
civilized. So
Yeah.
that's what it's kind of a crazy deal.
I so I ran a nonprofit before, and so I know what it's like to have a board of directors, and
Hmm.
especially one as a founder. It's very humbling because you founded the thing. That doesn't mean that you are ultimately uh, the best decision maker on things. You're the executor of the vision that should really come from the board. Um, and it's also nice to not have the burden of making all of the decisions yourself, and to have diversity of thought and opinions of people to help you see things from a different perspective, right?
Yeah, Steve, you nailed it. I mean, one of
Yeah.
the things I tell people is I feel all grown up suddenly,
Hmm.
and I have to be more of a professional leader now than just as I used to
Professional
say
leader,
the
yeah,
sheriff.
for
And
sure.
and and the help is really great to have.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The one thing that I didn't fully appreciate was like you spend 2 weeks to have a 2 hour meeting. Like you have to put things and prepare enough information so that people can help give and make the right decisions. And especially for someone like yourself in the field that you are, like, a process driven, people, planet centered organization that is now owned by its employees. There must be a lot of complexity in uh, in running two entities, right?
Yeah, and it's also some legal ramifications. That complexities includes legal liabilities because
Yeah.
as a government controlled entity, which is an ESOP, you actually have some serious rules to follow, and they're not
Yeah.
always black and white. Sometimes you're trying to interpret rules that the IRS and the Department of Labor are going to agree with or not on how you're
Hmm.
running your business, which is sort of interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. You mentioned the 2 hour meeting. So ours is 12 hours. It starts
Let's
at noon
go.
on one day and then goes to noon on the next day, with an
Wow.
evening meal. I know of some that go for 2 days and more. I don't know what
Wow.
you could really do in 2 hours other than just simply report. And one of the
Yes.
best advice I got was don't from one of my independent board members was don't treat us as a people you need to report to. Treat us as an asset and a sounding board of advice and stuff you need to learn
Yeah.
or bounce things around at. And that was helpful for me because I tend to be a here's the deal, you know, bite-sized amounts of information. Thank you very much. See you later. But now I'm actually approaching it like, here are the things that I'm struggling with, or that we as a company are struggling with, or here's the progress we made on the last thing you asked us to make progress about.
Yeah.
Is this enough? So board can be really powerful, and on an ESAP, it's actually a legal requirement that you have a very powerful board,
Yeah.
and that's changed.
And they're elected or are they appointed?
So they are I recruit them, or
Yeah.
I recruit them with my other team members on the board. Maybe we'll make a suggestion. Then after vetting, we offer them to the independent ESOP trustee, who
Hmm.
is someone who is not part of the company, but who is assigned or otherwise hired by us to make sure that we're following these rules and regs by the Department of Labor that I mentioned.
Yeah.
And then he or she, the trustee, will either approve or disapprove of them. And typically they will approve of them. But so it's not really, so they sort of have to be elected, but it's, not really a normal election in that way. It's,
For sure.
it's more of a appointment, an agreement, and a vetting.
For sure. For sure. What how's this year looking for both businesses?
We are okay. We're
Hmm.
steady.
Yeah.
We're not, after a few years of blistering growth,
Hmm.
we're not seeing the blistering right now,
Yeah.
but we're also. I've heard of people saying, or I think in the macro, there's a bit of a downturn, but we haven't really seen that too much. I say that knocking on wood. Bec-
Yeah. Yeah. Um, it's my kids. So
yeah, it's good to have kids. Did they say cardinals? What?
well, is this is funny, and this is we can maybe keep this in the podcast, but I have an old dog, and he farted really really bad, and so and
Oh,
his name is Carlos. So my
Carlos.
son's
Oh, God.
yeah my son said, "Oh my gosh, Carlos," because it stinks really bad right now because he just farted.
Wow.
So
So I'm glad I can see you, but I'm really glad I can't smell you.
yes, 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 yeah. Um. So anyway, yeah, that's interesting. When I mean, this is 2024. This is going to be an election year coming up. For somebody that's been in business for this long, have you noticed like business being affected by election years or like just cycle or economic sentiment or fearful? Like, do you see any correlation or do you just kind of operate on your own?
So might be above my pay scale. I myself, I see the slowdown based on interest rates. I don't really see fear of a dictator, autocrat wannabe taking the election, because the people who support him think it's a good thing, and those of us who don't think it's unimaginable. So we just kind of walk along our trail and wake up in the morning and keep working. So I don't think the election year has almost anything to do with economic cycle that I'm in.
Okay.
Interest rates, sure.
Interest rates. Yeah.
Maybe something to do with the Dow. The Dow is
Hmm.
up pretty good, but
Yeah.
I have
Yeah.
one client who's who has made their millions on Tesla stock, for instance, and Tesla stock is down right now, so they've put off their house for another 6 months. I mean, that's a macro issue about a micro issue about a macro consideration. So,
Yeah.
not really
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting. That's interesting. Um,
I bet I just ticked off a bunch of your listeners when I mentioned that
oh yeah. I
autocrat
mean,
dictator wannabe.
yeah.
You'll
Dictator
be
wannabe.
getting those. You'll be getting those in the notes section.
The
Why
yeah,
are
and
you
the
listening?
feedback. Well, I think honestly one of the things that I don't know, I always found that at a certain level of business, um, I mean this may take off some people, but I'm like, if you're blaming external forces on the lack of your productivity and you know uh, of your business growth, then you probably shouldn't be in business. And so, like focusing on what you can control and focusing on the quality of your product, your people, your mindset, all of those sorts of things as an entrepreneur are things that you can focus on. And so, yeah, I mean, there's lots of people that like to blame other people for their failure of or lack of business growth. Oh, it's because of this or it's because of that. Um, and so, I mean, there's always where there's a will, there's a way. Um,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
and if you're stuck, then you got to find other resources. I mean, speaking of, like, was there a moment in your business where you just felt pretty stagnant? I'm sure there might have been multiple. And like, could you give us an example of how you sort of found your way out of it, or like a solution, or is there a time in your history where something like that happened?
yeah. As you say, there's probably many times. I mean, the life of a small business person is an ups and down. It's a roller coaster life. I mean, that's. I wish I could say it differently, but for most of us in this position, there's a lot of pressure one day, and then the next day you sleep. But the pressure is more more common than the sleeping. But certainly, I used that example earlier, and it's the best one. About I just reached a wall back in 2006 or so, where I just wasn't, the healthy, entrepreneurial, positive leader that I wanted to be, and realized I had just stagnated in my role. We had, as I say, grown to about 80 some people. I no longer could do the frontline work that I like to do, which is to talk to clients and do a raising and put the hands on. And I realized I needed a change. And so I started looking around. My wife and my, at that time, 3 and 4 and 5 year old son would get on a plane. We'd land on we knew we wanted to be somewhere in the Pacific Northwest for a lot of reasons. We'd land in an airport, we'd rent an RV, and we'd do what I call cloverleaf trips, which is to get off the interstate on the cloverleaf and find the local community and see if that's where we might want to live, or that's where we might want to start a new business. And we did that all over the Pacific Northwest about 6 different times, and ended up in Portland. But there are other nice places out here, I guarantee you. So that messing with yourself, you could almost call it.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's super required for creative, energetic, antsy people like myself, and so that's what I
Yeah.
did. I moved. Moved to a city where I didn't know anybody, couldn't find the school or the grocery store. Did it in the middle of a recession while designing and building my own home, and starting a new business out here, and hoping to keep the business in New York going. So it wasn't an easy 5 years while we worked through that at the beginning, but it certainly shook me out of my stagnation. I'll tell you that. Nothing like swimming in front of the alligators to keep your attention.
That is super inspiring because I just recently I was just in Portland probably about a month ago, 3 4 weeks ago, and
Dude, you should have called.
I know, and but I'll be coming out there, and so one of the things that I went and I saw a client down in Eugene, and on the highway down there, for somebody that works in our industry, is amazing to see the amount of trucks with logs on it. To me, that's like phenomenal. And then to like see on the side like piles of logs, and you see like industry happening around trees, and then you see mountains full, and like you're and then when I got back to Portland, just this sort of calm sort of it's urban, but there's like this sustainable ethos around it. It feels very community driven. I got really excited by that. And then a couple weeks later, or a couple weeks before that, I was in New York, and that's my home. I live in Chicago now. Well, I was born and raised in New York, and so I got these two sort of energies from like traveling, where and I'm very inspired by people and places and forming real relationships and connections, and so I can see the allure of like leaving New York and then going to someplace else, and especially something that where your heart is. um, I can see how that can really make an impact on your life, and as an entrepreneur too, like you always need. I mean, like you said, there a lot of us are ADD, right, or ADHD, and being able to be in a space where we're inspired and we have the energy to keep things going. If we're operating on that level, everybody benefits, like all of our clients and our partners and our employees. And so that's really really cool. Is that And so, what does this year hold for you aside from 12-hour board meetings and letting the reins go of the general manager job?
Motorcycling across Mongolia with my son. That's coming up here pretty quick.
That's
That'll be fun.
incredible. That's so much fun.
Yeah, yeah. It's a really big country,
Wow.
and I'm told we're going to see a lot of mud and a lot of rain. So I don't know if that's exactly what I signed up for, but that'll be interesting. And then
Yeah, nice
this,
adventure.
th- yeah, this fall we've actually just taken delivery on about $1 million worth of Italian timber cutting equipment, and we
Mm-hmm.
built a new building called the New Beamery, where
Mm-hmm.
we're going to be cutting our beams in, and we created a really interesting 90-foot clear span glulam truss system that
Okay.
I'm out to prove that in America we don't always have to use steel and concrete. We can use wood for even industrial buildings, and so very excited about that. And it's gorgeous, but it's also not overly. It's not particularly more expensive. So we live in wood country. Wood has low carbon equivalents when it comes to the making of a workable product
Yeah.
compared to say steel beams or concrete. And so why aren't we using more of it here to build our industrial buildings? So that's a big new project for us, and we're aiming to break into that market pretty aggressively.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. Well, so this is a part of the podcast where I give you any advice and we sort of brainstorm any solutions to any challenges that you may be having. Is there anything that you're thinking of right now that, or something that you'd like an extra set of eyes and ears on that I can help you out with?
One of the items that I, like all of your listeners, probably run into is, finding the right people. And right now, there's a lot of not right people out there. And so, how do we do that these days? Do you have any magic for that, Steve?
Yeah, I do. I do. So obviously it all depends on the people, right? Like on the position and the skills. But for administrative, so the one thing that I would sort of the one thing that I like to say to folks as it relates to talent, because in for a majority of your business life cycle, it's always about client acquisition, right? And so you have a set of tools and a set of strategies to acquire more clients. And then to continue to grow and scale, it's about talent acquisition. So you need the right people around. And so the same energy that you put into finding talent, finding clients, it's kind of the same energy that you need to do to find talent. And so, and for me, I think having uh, marketing the people of your business, telling their stories, being able to talk about the ESOP opportunity, being able to um, talk about the history, the triple bottom line, like that same energy that you take to like when you're marketing a client to differentiate yourself, like that's the foundation is like being able to just make sure that you like put out marketing and storytelling and advertise the fact that you are hiring. The second thing is depending on your position, the positions that you're looking for. Um, one of, and especially on the craft side, being able to have distinct partnerships with either organizations or trade schools, or people that have relatable skills. So whether it is technology skills or food service skills, or like look at what are the comparable skills that can easily relate over to your business. And so, for instance, I just hired a salesperson on my team, um, and they are a sort of design sales consultant, and their background was in they worked at a print shop. So I need people to, when a lead comes in, they book a time to go out and visit them, measure their space, give them a consultation, and then work with my team in order to produce the end product and then deliver it with a smile so that they're happy. She had a related experience because she worked at a print shop. So somebody wanted a custom sign, and so they were able to essentially do the same thing. And by the way, they came with a book of business that we can tap into for my business as well. So that was one example. Another example is, um, if there are specialized, give me an example of somebody that's a maker, either on the millwork side. Just give me a position that you
Sure.
need to recruit in.
Molder operator.
Molder operator. Awesome. Okay. So a molder operator, give me the three benefits, or not, the three skills that they need in order to be a successful molder operator.
Attention to detail,
Okay.
efficiency of movement, and
Okay.
self criticism when it comes to making sure the product is correct on the other end.
Is that something that you can teach?
I think I can teach anything, but
Okay.
yeah.
And who's your ideal candidate? like aside from those skills? Like give me a personality or like a makeup of that type of person.
Withdrawn type, focused, and sort of a head down. Doesn't have to be overly social.
Hmm.
You're asking for personality types. I mean, I'm not a psychologist.
Sure, 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 sure. So for me, I would, if you're looking for that, I mean, and I'm in the process of hiring uh, an assistant for myself. And so one of the things that I did was I put out a very compelling job description, attractive headline title, right? Two, in the job description, um, I said you have to do three things. One, you need to write a cover letter, right? And in the cover letter, the very first word in the cover letter, you have to write the word purple. And in the cover letter, you need to tell me one thing that you're proud of. So I got about 40 people applied because I had a great headline. And then from there, I had 8 people that followed the directions, which was great. Then the second step was, and I replied back to them and I said, you followed the first instructions. This is your second instruction. I want you to send me a Loom recording, a screen recording under 5 minutes and answer these 5 questions within 5 minutes, right? From those 8 people, 4 of them actually followed within a timely manner. And then from those 4 people, I asked them to, and I paid them to do an assignment. And the assignment was they had to do 3 things and it would take them an hour and a half to do. And so now I'm down to 2 people. And this all took about a week to do. And so I think you can literally do the same thing and create your own training program for specialized positions in your business. So where you go mass wide, you do the same marketing. I mean, who wouldn't want to work at an employee owned business where you can literally have a career? Like people are looking for those things, right? You may have to look in other areas. It might be like displaced, people that have been out of, downsized from work, or people looking to make a career change, or people in comparable skills like service industry, right? Because they're used to producing a product and showing up. And if their product, whether it's food, is terrible, then that's a reflection on their job. It's the same thing with you. People need to produce a product and it needs to be of the highest quality. So that to me shows that would be a great way to do it. So anyway, is that helpful to hear all
Sure.
that?
I like the idea of starting with purple.
Yeah. 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 You just it's just it's a little thing to weed out people essentially.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it is interesting, and you have to be careful that you don't, by doing that, lose the very person you want because they find that, whatever reason, something you said might be different. But it was sort of a risky, interesting move on your part. I wish you the best of luck choosing the right one of the last two.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I'm picking them tomorrow. So and then the last part was I actually had an interview with them, with both of the two before. So like
Gosh,
I
I hope
actually
so.
had I actually had a conversation. So yeah, I mean, for me it's I've hired and fired hundreds of people, virtual and in-person people throughout my career, hundreds of people. So um, I think you're probably a good people person too, right? Like you can understand people and you can see people.
Well, I'm better now than I was years ago. So, you live and you
Yeah,
learn, right?
yeah, yeah, for sure. Cool. All right. Well, any last bit of parting advice for the Woodpreneur community?
If anybody wants to reach out to me about employee ownership or anything, or woodworking, for all I know, please feel free to. I'm Jonathan, Jonathan, at newenergyworks.com. And, I always love these conversations. Thanks so much for having me on, Steve.
All right. Thank you for being on and sharing your wisdom and your expertise with the Woodpreneur community.